government says some BEE requirements for state-owned entities in relation to procurement processes will now be dropped. This is part of new regulations announced by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana late last month, saying that this will modernize procurement within SOEs. So let's unpack just how these changes can actually help embattled companies like Eskom and Transnet. For that discussion, we're joined now by Kganki Matabane, who is the Chief Executive of the Black Business Council. Kganki, it's great to have you with us on the program. I mean, essentially, SOEs now have the option to not use companies, or rather to use companies that are not fully BEE compliant. That doesn't sound like good news to me.
Good morning, Michelle and the viewers. You are right. It's not good news at all, and it does not only affect state-owned enterprises. It affects the entire state, all organs of state. So currently, what has been happening is that when you evaluate a bid, there will be 20%. Or 10% depending on the value. Those points then will be allocated to economic transformation and localization. So the minister has done away with that. So when you're evaluating a bid, you don't have to consider a BEE or any localization. You consider what they now call special or specific goals. And then those goals will basically be determined by those companies or the department or municipality. So what's likely to happen? The organs of state will just basically decide not to do anything about BEE. So 100% white-owned company that does not even have any level that is non-compliant will be allowed to participate in this process, and then that obviously is very disappointing, because it means Section 217 of the Constitution that is trying to bring people who are excluded by law to participate in the economy are not going to be able to participate. But what we are saying from the Black Business Council point of view, we're saying, let's focus on what is called the Public Procurement Bill, because there's a bill that is before NETLEC now. Right. The bill's intention is to try to repeal this act, because the problem now is that we've got an act that was enacted in 2000, and that act is the one that is not necessarily being transformational.
So Kganki, can you explain to us what was the Finance Minister trying to do with this new way of doing things? What's the aim here?
Yeah, I think the Finance Minister is trying to run away from the Constitutional Court that was that took a decision that the previous preferential procurement regulations were unconstitutional. But the part of that was unconstitutional was the process that the minister followed, because it says the minister cannot prescribe to organs of state what to do. So the minister is trying to do that, but in doing that is basically, in our view, is running away from the constitutional responsibility of National Treasury, because National Treasury is supposed to guide organs of state when they procure. But the minister is basically running away from that and say, it's not my responsibility. Each and every SOC or each and every government department, municipality will do as they wish. And then that we think is not being a responsible minister.
Well, is that fair to say, Kganki? Because he says, yes, what you're saying is correct. He says these new regulations empower state organs to determine their own preferential procurement policies, right? But he says that they must do so within the ambit of the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act.
Yes, but the problem is this thing that they call specific goals. Maybe if I can quote it for you. It says the specific goals may include contracting with persons or categories of persons historically advantaged by unfair discrimination on the basis of race, gender, disability, including the implementation of the reconstruction and development programs. published in 1994. So the problem there is the may. So he's not taking responsibility to say the organs of state shall. The moment you say may, what's going to happen? Most of the SOCs and organs of state are just basically going to do nothing. We've seen, even when the regulations wanted them to procure from black-owned companies, BE-compliant companies, they decided not to do it. So now when you've given them the leeway, what's going to happen? Most of the people are going to say, we're just going to procure from anyone who qualifies from price point of view, and then we need economic transformation and then localization. And the danger with that is that when we don't localize, we won't be able to create jobs in South Africa. That's because that's the purpose of localization, to say, let's not create jobs outside South Africa. Let's make sure that we have, as we have the highest unemployment rate, 70% youth unemployment, let's create jobs here in South Africa. But now that has been thrown out of the window. No one is going to be caring about that. People will only be interested in price, and obviously the bigger companies are going to discount themselves and kill small businesses.
Well, that was my next question to you, and you've already answered it in part. The impact, obviously, will be on black businesses, right?
Yes, the impact will be black business, small businesses, businesses owned by women, businesses owned by youth, businesses owned by people living with disabilities. Because remember, those people were excluded in the past. So the transformation legislations that we have are trying to bring them into the equation. These are still disadvantaged because most of them don't even have funding. When they have to compete on price, they can't discount themselves to a certain extent, because otherwise they're going to be out of business. So this, in our view, it basically entrenches big business to continue to dominate. And we're 28 years into democracy, not much has been achieved, and this is a serious reversal of the little gains that we've got. So we are busy at Netflix discussing, as I said, the public procurement bill that is going to replace this triple PFA. And then we were calling the minister to fast track that process, because once that process is done, we've got the new act. The new act will replace this, and it will do away with this. And in the act, what we're demanding, as the president of the country has always promised women, for example, we're demanding that there must be that 40% set aside for women-owned businesses. There must be set aside for youth-owned businesses, set aside for people living with disabilities, so that we can do away with the discrimination and the disadvantage that we still have now. And we can at least bring as many people as possible into the mainstream economy.
Kganki Matabane, let me thank you for your time this morning. Black Business Council CEO. Several voices weighing in on these new BEE rules set to kick in after that announcement by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana. Kganki Matabane, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning.